There are a lot of Resident Evil games, but there's one game that I think doesn't get enough credit, and that has to be Resident Evil Outbreak. Outbreak was released in Japan in 2003 and was the first Resident Evil game that aimed to make a multiplayer experience. This was when a bunch of other multiplayer games were all on the rise, and Capcom decided, hey, you know what? We want to make one too. So they made Resident Evil Outbreak. This game, I'm gonna be honest, is one of the best ones I have actually ever played. It was genuinely so much fun, but the servers are down. There are still people that do run Discord servers to make sure this thing functions. But you might be wondering, how can this game be that good? What is so fun about it? Well, that's what I want to dive into today. I want to talk about what makes Resident Evil Outbreak so good. Now, first things first, we need some context for Outbreak. Now, this game came into existence thanks to Eiichiro Sasaki at Capcom. He was tasked to work on the project, and the initial versions of Outbreak aimed more at it being a game rewarding you for completing different scenarios faster than your teammates. But Eiichiro saw this and realized that it wouldn't make for good co-op gameplay, since you could just leave your friends behind, and decided that the goal should be to work together to complete the scenario as thoroughly and as speedy as you can together. Now, if you didn't play Outbreak online, you would have to order your AI companions around, but the thing is that the AI would have a kind of mind of their own and could deny helping you and run off to do their own things. This happened to me a few times as I was playing through the game, but the AI are basically integral to the playthrough, and I would say for a game made in 2003, they pulled them off pretty well, as I was able to keep them listening to me and following me throughout most of my runs. Emphasis on most of my runs, it didn't always work out.
Son of a bitch! I know that.
Fuck you!
Booting up Outbreak, we are faced with a scenario screen. This is because Outbreak doesn't have a single straightforward story, but is rather set in several scenarios that are not in chronological order, so you're going to be kind of doing the story a little bit out of place. Now, there are a total of 5 scenarios as well as multiple characters for you to select to play as, with each character having their own unique abilities and special perks. Now, for us, we're going to be beginning with the first scenario called Outbreak. For this one, we choose to play as Kevin Ryman, a police officer in the Raccoon Police Department. After that, we choose our difficulty and we start Outbreak. We see a bunch of rats running through the sewers, and also a bit of a foreshadowing for one of the final bosses of the game is shown here, as an umbrella soldier is trying to run away from a monster.
Look at all this damage!
This intro is a perfect setup for the things that are to come, as we are going to see a lot of the things from the intro make a reappearance throughout the story. Basically, the T-Virus is out, and we are stuck in Raccoon City around this time of Resident Evil 2 and in between Resident Evil 3. So we're going to be playing as different people within Raccoon City and trying to survive the best we can.
Earlier at today's football match between the Raccoon Sharks and the Old Port Hunters. Apparently the game...
Where's your mind at?
What?
Huh?
As we're sitting inside of the bar, we notice that a strange man walks inside. We quickly learn that he is infected. He bites the barkeep, and so our journey begins. First things first is to check our inventory. Now, as you may notice, Resident Evil, well, it stays true to form, which is that you don't have a lot of space in your inventory to work with, which means that we're going to be using our teammates, the AI bots, to help us carry stuff that we require. Grab onto Bob, the old police officer, as he's currently injured, seemingly infected, and then we try to drag him over to the door. On the bar, we can find ourselves a key. If we hurry up here, we can get out of this specific bar, Jack's bar, quickly. Now, if you play the game slowly, the zombies will actually break through the door. And if you didn't push the giant barrel in front of the door, then they will break in even faster. But if we do it fast enough, we can get through the door and go upstairs. Once we make it up the stairs in the next room, in the staff room, we make it to the top where we find a zombie. Of course, there's a bunch of them along the way, but this one we're going to ignore because it's not worth to waste our ammo on it. All the different rooms and learn what's going on in this place. We learn that there have been a few kids that have been trying to break into the bar at night, and this also allows us to know which way to go if we want to make it up. After finding one of the keys on the table, we can make it to the roof. We grab a hold of Bob and try to make it through the door, as a bunch of zombies are trying to catch up to us. Of course, luckily the AI teammates kind of block and allow us to go through while they keep us safe. As we make it upstairs, we get to the liquor room. Here we can go either to the left or go into the door on our right. If we enter the door on the right, we'll find a saving station. Now, something about this game you have to keep in mind is that when you save, you're not actually saving. You're just giving yourself a temporary pause. This is the only thing that it actually serves as. You're more or less just giving yourself a temporary pause so you can return to the game later. Right now, we don't really need that, and instead, we look for another key which will move this forklift. Now that we move the forklift, we, and not Bob, have to climb over and open the door for him.
Shit!
Of course, if you've kept Bob alive this whole time and you've made it all the way to the roof, you will be rewarded with this cutscene.
I can't move anymore. I know me, and I'm not gonna be someone else's burden.
Bob, stop!
Unfortunately, he is not able to stop Bob, and eventually, he ends it.
Conscience remains.
Oh, Bob.
After doing this though, there is a weapon left behind. The same pistol he used, we can now pick up and use through our playthrough. This would normally not be available if you didn't keep Bob with you all the way to the roof. So yes, this cutscene is something that can be totally skipped if you are not paying attention or not trying to complete the full part of the game. So this is one of the aspects that I love about Resident Evil Outbreak. There's always a reason to return to these locations and redo these exact same runs multiple times. As we're about to leave the roof, we actually hear something from down below.
Attention everyone. Due to the riots in progress, this area will be closed off soon. Please proceed to this checkpoint immediately. If you do not leave the area in time, we cannot guarantee your safety.
It turns out the police is here and they want to help people out that are in the area. This is pretty awesome because, well, we need to escape, so we'll see if we can get some help. But before we do that though, as we're on the ledge here and we jump, a really cool mechanic happens in this game which I think is awesome, which is that if you have already crossed over and your AI teammates get stuck on the ledge, you can help them out and they can do that for you as well, vice versa, which I think is a pretty cool, neat little feature, giving you that feeling that it is a co-op experience and you're trying to survive together. As we make it outside, another cutscene plays.
Christ, you're still alive. The whole city's a war zone. Move the police car over there to build a barricade. Go!
Alright, well, we're gonna help the officer out because we all want to survive, so we try to push this giant truck in the way. The purpose of this is to specifically block the zombies from reaching us. Now that we've made it through that, we can run into this alley. Thankfully, the officer is able to hold them back at the door, but we are struggling here. There are a lot of zombies and we're running out of ammunition and everything. So what do? Well, the officer gives his life and he drops the gun. He had a shotgun, which is definitely one of the best guns you can have in really any Resident Evil game. Shotties are really powerful. But we also pick up a lighter. This lighter is needed because what we're going to do next is to spread out the fuel from the giant gas truck. As the fuel spreads out, we put it all on fire, and baby, it all burns. But we gotta hurry up now. As you may notice, this whole section is basically on a timer, so we gotta hurry up, jump into water before it explodes. We swim through the sewers, and while we're down here, we have to make our way all around. Eventually, though, we get to safety. We're right outside the Apple Inn. In this location, we can walk around and eventually we find some newspaper clippings. They specifically reference and talk about there being some noises coming from the sewers, and that 8 people went missing. This could have been the initial stages of the T-virus and it going loose on people. But now that we sorted that out, we get ourselves armed up and ready because it's time to rumble.
That's it then? Get in, please.
As we drive away in the car, we eventually come to a stop. The road is blocked. Due to this, we all get out, and now is the perfect opportunity to stock up on weapons, ammo, and or healing items. This is because this is going to be the end segment of this specific part of the game. Now that we've gotten everything we need, we head up to the footbridge. As we go here, we look down and we see, well, honestly, we see hell.
What's taking so long? Hurry up!
Now, this explains what the police officers in the Raccoon City have been up to. They've literally been preparing detonations, bombs, to blow up all the zombies that are about to come in. So, well, they're in trouble. We gotta help them out. We run down, and now we gotta go find the detonator. Once we get it, we blow these boys up.
Now that was a rush.
So that was the first mission. The police arrive as well as medics to try to help anybody that was injured and who still isn't infected. We ride away as Kevin inside of the truck along with a few other of our team members. But the army is here. They have taken over the city and surrounded it, not letting anybody in or anybody out. So that was the first scenario. However, the next scenario will not actually continue from where this one left off. The army's taken over Raccoon City and surrounded it, but the story will not continue the way we expect it to. If you actually want to see the complete story the way that it was intended to be, you have to play a game called Resident Evil Outbreak File 2. File 2 was a game that was made as a follow-up, because the original plan for Outbreak was to have it in 3 parts: the main game, File 2, and File 3. But out of all of these, only Outbreak and File 2 came out. File 3 never actually made it out of development. They had planned to release it, but due to the poor sales of File 2, they actually gave up on it. However, you can still get the full story if you continue watching this video. We're going to explain what happens. As you can see on the screen, on the left side here, we have these scenarios which we can play, every single one within the first Outbreak game. On the right side are all the scenarios which you can play specifically in File 2. Now the thing is, I've organized them on the screen here in the order that the community seems to think that they're based in. Of course, Outbreak is the first one. The second mission that you do within the actual chronological order would be Hellfire. However, the one we're going to be doing next is specifically Below Freezing Point, which takes place a little bit further into the story, but let's dive into Below Freezing Point and figure out what's going on here. The events of Below Freezing Point take place sometime after the initial outbreak that happened in Raccoon City. We play alongside Yoko Suzuki, who's leading George Hamilton and Alyssa Ashcroft down into Nest, which is a lab owned by William Birkins, who was the main man behind the T-virus. The thing, however, about our characters is that they all started off in Jack's bar, but probably split up into separate groups when escaping the initial outbreak. A quick rundown on each character is as follows. Kevin Ryman, who's a Raccoon PD officer. David, who's a sort of mechanic with a secret past. Mark Wilkins, a Vietnam veteran that works as a security guard alongside Bob, who I initially thought was a police officer. George Hamilton, a surgeon at a Raccoon City hospital. Cindy Lennox, who's more or less just a waitress from Jack's bar. And then of course, Yoko Suzuki, who is a former Umbrella employee but who has lost her memory for some reason while she worked at Umbrella. Alyssa Ashcroft is another one who serves as a field reporter for the local newspaper. And finally, Jim Chapman, a subway worker who is a bit of a coward in the games. So, for the sake of clarity, I'll try to explain what the characters are and where they are placed in the canon throughout these scenarios, starting off with Below Freezing Point. As we start off Below Freezing Point, we're once again going to be playing as Kevin, as we watch Yoko, who's leading a few of the others down into the Nest lab. She's confronted by a researcher named Monica.
Monica? I didn't expect you to return. After your little incident, I assumed that you went and hid under a rock like the little child that you are.
After threatening and demanding Yoko's Umbrella ID at gunpoint, we finally start going through the lab and finding a way out.
Have a nice life. What's left of it.
As we run through the hallways and pick up our gun along the way, eventually we reach some stairs. They lead to an air vent that will take us to the South Passage. Here we have to be very careful. We're actually going to be splitting up with one of our team members, and we also have to avoid a lot of infected people, especially on the ground. Now keep in mind, some of these infected people on the ground will actually not be alive when we first pass them, but will be brought back to life later down the line, so just keep that in mind. We get to the security center. Here, our main way out is this area is going to be to unlock a few things. To do this, we need a few items. While running down one of the hallways, multiple infected have been basically taken care of. It's just important, however, that we still save our ammo, as in this scenario there is a challenge that awaits us right at the end, so we'll be needing that ammunition. We pick up the frozen wrench, however, since it's frozen, we can't actually use it, so we have to run all the way back to the break room where the sink has disgusting but warm water which will unfreeze the wrench. Now that we use it, the electrical outlet inside of the security office will open and we'll find a valve. This valve handle is able to open up another door which will take us downstairs. But keep in mind, this is really important. This item will be needed later, and what I actually did here was I forgot the handle, and later in the playthrough this cost me a lot of time as I had to run all the way back to find it again, so make sure that you actually keep some of the items on you if you're doing these runs. This is one of those things in Resident Evil Outbreak, and just really any Resident Evil game, that can become a little bit annoying, as you don't have an infinite supply of space in your inventory. You have to make sure that you have the right items on you, and sometimes you're gonna have to backtrack to find things.
I just had a thought.
First of all, though, we do use some of the codes we collected along the way and put it into the computer, and by doing this, it will unlock some of the doors deeper down in the lab. So we head deeper down the rabbit hole and explore. We find some notes mentioning their work on the virus and how they were creating it. We need to deal with some more zombies. And we also find the inter-office memo with the passcode 9741. But that's not all. One of our teammates, in this case Yoko, actually died and got infected, leaving her into a zombie as well. So we cap her ass and then we move on. Just as we're about to leave the lab, you can actually see me dropping the valve wheel and leaving it on the desk. This cost me some time later on running back and getting it. As we enter the next passageway, we find the chemical room, where you can use the code that we found earlier, the 9741, and open a medical box containing VP017, a chemical which can come in useful. We also find UMB number 3, which we combine with the VP017 to create the V-Jolt. This is needed to remove a giant infection plant that has basically taken over the halls and the elevator shaft. As we climb up the ladder, we find that, yeah, this is where we needed the valve again, so we have to run back, pick it up, and return.
Yeah, boy.
As we head through to the next floor and passageway, we have to pick up the monthly passcode. This is a recent set of codes which we'll be needing to escape the facility, but we already used these codes earlier in the security room, so we should be pretty fine. In the meantime, somewhere else in the facility, it looks like Mindy's in trouble. However, after a lot of backtracking and running around and spending a lot of tedious time trying to find the things we need, we finally are able to get out of here. After crawling through one of the vents, we find a man that has given up on life, seemingly just not wanting to keep fighting. But also, we discover a new enemy type, leeches, and these things are the bane of my existence. I hate them so much with a true passion. They genuinely are so annoying because they will keep jumping on your chest and keep hitting you for multiple damage over and over again. It's best to just avoid them if needed, or just shoot them and kill them, as then they will not be a problem anymore. As we reach the West Passage, we discover something terrifying. It's the Hunters. These guys are a different form than the ones you might be used to, but they are a well-known enemy type in Resident Evil. Basically, it's a human and reptile cross. They are fast, and they were one of the first BOWs produced by Umbrella by combining reptile and human DNA. But lucky for us, these hunters are frozen, so we can avoid them for now, but they can become a problem later down the line. We are on the hunt for a blowtorch. We're going to be needing this thing to unfreeze some stuff, and then in the temperature room, we turn down the temperature and make sure that everything in this place unfreezes. However, this will also cause the hunters to unfreeze. But we just hurry up and go back to the main shaft. As we get here, we reach the turntable. Now that we're here, we can actually interact with it and let a short cutscene play. We use the blowtorch to thaw the keycard machine in front of us, and this takes a bit of time to get figured out, but once we've done it, the key timer begins to run. And all we gotta do now is either fight the hunters and the zombies that will show up, Or the better option for us is simply to hide on the locomotive or the train machine until the timer runs down. Meanwhile, the cutscene plays and we see the lady from the start of the scenario show up again. Seems she's been infected herself by something and she falls and dies. In the process, she also drops the bag that she was carrying, which contains vials and the virus. Now that the timer has ran its course, the cutscene is going to play and we're able to go upstairs. But we also discover that something happened to the lady from before.
Man, that thing is fucking ugly.
There was a parasite inside of her, and this is going to be the first boss battle in Outbreak. We're up against the G-Mutant, and this thing has been in the games since Resident Evil 2, and it's honestly extremely annoying to beat. As soon as we leave the cutscene, the battle has to start. Now this thing is relatively slow, but the G-Mutant isn't really the issue. Rather, it's the little parasites on the ground, which we have to deal with, because they keep just jumping onto us. The best way to actually defeat the G-Mutant is to just force it to walk in the path of the locomotive, and by interacting with one of the keypads, we can keep pushing the train into the G-Mutant and eventually taking it down. But like I said, the biggest problem in this battle has got to be the little leeches on the ground. They keep you moving and they keep you busy, forcing you to not just be able to stand in one place all the time. However, you can also just kill them using your gun, if you have a gun. We quickly jump onto the train with all that remains and escape from the location as fast as we can, leaving the G-Mutant behind to slowly die. And that was Below Freezing Point. We've now completed the first two scenarios, but like I said, the story here isn't becoming very clear yet. It seems like the group has split up at some point throughout their journey, but it also feels like things aren't really in place. Things are going to become a little bit more clear though as we go, and at the end I'm going to explain exactly what way I think the story functions. The next scenario is the Hive. The Hive is arguably one of the most fun scenarios in Outbreak, but I think the most interesting thing about it is where it fits in within the lore here. See, I think the Hive most likely takes place right before Below Freezing Point, and the reason I say this is because of specifically Yoko and her group. I think that they ended up at the Hive, or rather at the hospital, after being saved in Hellfire, which we're going to talk about later. And then they used the Hive here and the end of this scenario to get all the way to Birkin's lab, or the Nest lab, in Below Freezing Point. Either way, let's start the Hive. We are stuck at Raccoon City Hospital, and a doctor is running around and panicking. We follow the doctor into the hallway, and inside of the nurse's office we pick up a few items. But now, here's the big selling point, the most horrifying part of this scenario. As we go into room 302, where we pick up a gun, right after doing that, the Leech Man crawls out of a vent and attacks us. This guy is a normal human that has died, and he's been consumed by leeches, so our best case is to basically avoid him for now. As we make our way back into the nurse's office, the doctor from earlier is inside and is trying to help us, but before he can do anything, he tries to escape and is caught by the Leech Man. Things are getting bad. We have to hurry up. We gotta pick up a blood pack. These things are perfect because they serve as a way to distract the Leech Man while we make our way throughout different rooms. If you put them on the ground, the Leech Man will focus on the actual blood rather than focusing on you. Eventually, we and the boys escape to the first floor. We find these shutter switches and flip them, which grants us access to the hallway, and this place we have to be quick in. The Leechman is going to be following us, and he can show up at any given time, so our teammates kind of get lost while we're trying to escape here. We run across a few memos that give us codes for a chemical cabinet. Inside of it, we found B6. And we also run across this thing. This is a zombie dog, which you guys may recognize from other Resident Evil games, and honestly, they're quite annoying. But in the process, we also get the level 1 keycard, and we can make it now to room floor 2. Use the keycard to make it to the bottom floor. Here we find the mortuary. Inside, we can actually save our game, and as I mentioned before, saving is not super necessary because it only gives you a temporary save point in case you just want to come back to the game a little bit later. One of our teammates again finds us, but there are leeches and zombies crawling all around this place, so we don't have a lot of time to spare. We run into the sewers and find a padlock key. This can be used to unlock a door later on, which will be super useful. So we run upstairs to the rooftop. We use that key that we just got to unlock a special item, the submachine gun. We get it from an officer that is about to die. We pick it up, and now we have a much stronger weapon to work with. However, we are still in trouble. We need to still deal with the Leechman, so we head to the laboratory. Here we're going to be finding something interesting. There is a special room where if we make him enter it, specifically the Leechman, he's going to be able to be killed with the temperature going too high. This actually plays a cutscene, and the Leechman finally dies off. Now, it's really cool how this guy is actually killed and how the Leechman dies, because it is actually based on reality. Real leeches will die from things like salt because they get dried out. So if you use heat, they're gonna dry out and simply die because they need moisture. However, the reason we needed to kill him is because it's our only way to pick up the key card, which has access to level 2. Now that we have that, the Leechman is done for. Or is he? It's revealed to us that somewhere else in the hospital, one of our friends has died and been taken over by the Leechman, so we gotta hurry up and escape before he gets to us. Just as we're about to enter the escape section, we get into the underpass. A new Leechman jumps down from the vent and tries to stop us. But of course, the most logical thing you can do is to just avoid it. So we head out and we jump into a boat. And so we made it into the underpass. As we prepare to jump in the boat, a cutscene plays of us escaping, and it feels like another close call has been made. But nope, we get attacked by a giant leech. Now, this thing is a big version of the other leeches that we've been dealing with. And to defeat it, we have to slowly make our way backwards and go to the same location where we entered the boat. So basically, entrance to the outer pass. Either way, as we go backwards though, we have to shoot the vents above to hit the leech. Now, this battle is relatively easy. It can be a bit difficult if you don't have a weapon to shoot things with, but if you do have a proper weapon like the submachine gun, you can just hit the vents every time that the leech boss is closer, and if you bait it a few times, it will finally actually die. I will say though, for a boss battle, I really like the mechanic of having to sort of rely on the environment to actually defeat the bosses. In recent times, it does feel like boss battles have become a little bit too redundant, but I like the way the mechanic in this one works. It's not too complicated, and it feels more old school in the way you do things. Either way, we've used the environment to our advantage, and we've escaped the hospital.
Now I wonder if the normal world ever even existed. Things are that strange. If I keep walking, can I awake from this dream?
Now, after the escape from the hospital, we'll be heading over to the next and also the second to last scenario in Outbreak, that is Hellfire. Hellfire has got to be my least favorite scenario in all of this game, mostly because this level takes place in the Apple Inn. This is where one of the groups, which were split up in the beginning, actually went. And you might remember that the Apple Inn is also in the first mission. We pass it as we're running to the trucks and as we're trying to help the police officers to try to blow up the giant horde. I've got to say though, that making it to Hellfire is just really annoying. This place has just multiple rooms that are repetitive. It feels like we're just doing the same thing over and over again as we go through them. See two firefighters trying to stop the fire that's going on at the Apple Inn, but in the process they both fall and end up dead. We're in the courtyard, and as we head towards one of the windows, we see an unknown creature climbing on the window. For those that may recognize it, you will know that it is the Licker, a well-known enemy type that extends its tongue to deal damage. Visually, I just think this little moment is striking and terrifying, and given that Resident Evil changes point of view all the time, it's really cool when they use this to their advantage to kind of catch you off guard and scare you a bit. Now, of course, I'm playing this in a lit room, so I wasn't super terrified, but I can see how this can be done really well. It almost reminds me a little bit of this specific scene from Nightmare on Elm Street. Inside of the first room, we find the boiler, and after investigating the corpses of the firemen, we head upstairs into the Apple Inn Square. And this is also where I personally find the biggest issue with this specific scenario. A lot of the rooms inside of here, and even the hallways, can become somewhat similar, and it makes it really difficult to remember exactly where you need to go and where you've already been. Eventually, however, we find our way out to the balcony, and we crawl our way along the wall to make sure to avoid the flames that shoot out from the windows, with us finally reaching the northwest passage. And here, the confusion begins. We have to run around and get our hands on two items. One is the golden key, and the other is the silver key. The problem is, at that one point, I actually was running around and I lost the silver key. I had it on me, but I lost it. I just put it down because I switched it with a different item. I didn't realize I was going to have to use it more than once, and so I had to retrace my steps multiple times until I finally found it. But before any of that, we first need to unlock the security room. So we're on the hunt for a keycard. We find the keycard at the top of the boiler room, and when we bring it back, we unlock the security office. Inside there is a statue, and it's a way for us to unlock a secret passage and a secret room to escape from here. Now we don't really have the access to this. We need a red crystal, which can only be found by completing the following three things. 1. We find the gold key and the silver key. 2. We use the gold key to unlock the maintenance room, where we have to complete a short puzzle to activate the electricity. And number 3, and this is where things get really annoying, we basically have to do a bunch of mini puzzles. The number 1 is to actually interact with all of these paintings that are in different rooms all around the Apple Inn. Once we've done this, there is a specific room that has a giant map. This giant map will activate depending on if you activated the right paintings. If you've done all of this correctly, you will be able to unlock access to a specific item. However, I lost the silver key, which is needed to enter the final room where you can find the red gem. However, after a lot of going around trying to find the key again, we eventually get the red gem. And along the way, we have to deal with some of the Lickers. They tend to be pretty easy to shoot, but they can also become kind of annoying because they will hang on the ceilings and stuff, and you can sometimes forget that they're there and they'll just attack you. Plus, they have a lot of range, so it can be a little difficult to deal with. Back in the security office, we use the gem, and now we open a secret door that takes us to the Apple Inn front lobby. This front lobby will be relevant later down in the games as well, but for now, we pick up a grenade launcher that we found earlier, and we definitely need to get out of here. So we prepare ourselves to run to the building's exit. But our escape gets suspended. I did a joke there. Either way, this is the Regis Licker, arguably one of the easiest battles you will ever experience. All you have to do is keep some distance from yourself and the enemy and just shoot it with either your pistol, or if you picked up the grenade launcher, you can just spam it and this thing will instantly fall apart and die. Honestly, the hardest part is probably the normal Lickers that will surround you, but you can just click the little alarm on the front desk and that kind of just scares them away. Seems some officers and firefighters have broken down the door and helped us escape.
You made it. Get out. Hurry.
And so we've made it out of Hellfire. We got out of the Apple Inn. Now, I'll be honest, this was the weakest of the scenarios for me personally, mostly because it boils down to the lack of variety in the areas which we explored. The rooms can become very tedious to go through since they mostly resemble each other, and you can get lost quite easily. Like, I got lost all the time, and at the highest difficulty, I mean, I don't even know what you would feel about the boss battle, but I don't even think at the highest difficulty that it's really that difficult to deal with. Generally speaking, I just didn't like this level, but it does actually help us move the story forward. Specifically, what happens to the people that escaped the Apple Inn. We are theorizing here that they most likely were taken to the hospital, which is where, of course, the next scenario, the Hive, took place. and after that they escaped into the sewers and made it all the way to Birkin's lab. But moving on from the dread that was Hellfire, we head on into the final mission of the first game. We're going to be diving into decisions, and this is one of the best scenarios. Now, if we look at the timeline, decisions, if we look at the original timeline we put together, would be second to last of a mission within the lore, but I'll be tying all of these threads together at the end of the video. For now, though, all you need to know is that we've headed all the way to Raccoon University.
Too much growth weakens an organization. What should be important becomes overshadowed by greed. Mass production? Ridiculous! One masterpiece is enough.
We see a scientist inside of a lab, assuming this guy may be related to Umbrella in some way. We get some clues here for possibly what's going to be showing up at the end of this scenario.
This place too. What?
We cut to the survivors and George in particular, who has a letter from Peter Jenkins. He wants to provide some vital information, so George and the crew get together and head to Raccoon University.
Contact me as soon as possible. Peter Jenkins.
This is Raccoon University. Why there?
A few hours later, we all arrive and walk inside of the facility. So this mission in particular has got to be George's canon mission. It just makes sense with him being related to one of the people that works at this university. Either way though, we find ourselves inside of the university's main hall. And I've got to say, there's one thing that cost me a lot of time on this mission, and that was sharks, sharks, sharks. These things show up later in the scenario, but I ended up being so dumb that I lost about 5 times.
Police! Police! Help!
And when I say lost, I mean I had to restart this scenario 5 times in a row and redo everything. So either way, back into the main hall we go. We head over to one of the offices. After solving a quick puzzle, we get a red gem. We're going to be needing this one to unlock a special room. We head to another hallway, dispatch a few zombies, and then get to the drawing room. Here we will find the brass spectacles. If we put these on the statue outside of the drawing room, it will open a secret door, which we 100% need to have open for later down the line. But first, we go into an adjacent room and pull a blue lever. This is going to lower a statue that will give us another one of the gems needed for the secret door. We make it back into the main hallway, put in the blue gem, and we open up a basement door. It looks like Peter Jenkins, the man that actually brought us here and a friend of George's. Now, since we were playing on easy difficulty, he will just remain laying there, but if you play on very hard difficulty of Outbreak, he will actually wake up as a zombie and attack you. And all you need to know about Jenkins, however, is that he was a researcher at the Raccoon University and a friend of George's. Peter assisted in the creation of Daylight, a vaccine that is able to slow down the T-virus infection. And this is what he leaves in his notes, so we learn this information. He of course leaves the details as well as to how to make this vaccine. So we take the notes, and now it's time to make this thing. Resident Evil Outbreak will not really give you directions, but you can kind of figure out the general goal of what you're doing by following the notes you pick up around the map. It also gives you a reason to replay the game multiple times in case you missed something. Either way, we find ourselves in the elevator passage, which will allow us to go to the bottom floor. But at this point, our AI teammates will stay behind and we won't see them for some time, as we cap off a few spiders in the sewers. We reach a subway track, which is oddly placed next to a university underground, which is, again, a bit weird, but hey, what am I here to talk about? Either way, we find the subway, which actually has some very handy weapons, like the assault rifle. This thing is really strong and probably one of the fastest weapons we can get in this game, so we pick it up. We head into a T-shaped hallway and avoid a bunch of these annoying wasps. But as we go here, we find multiple zombies, which we have to pick off one by one, and thankfully we have the assault rifle, so it helps us. But again, the most annoying freaking enemy in this whole game has got to be the wasps. Now, these things are really annoying to deal with. You can either shoot them or just try to run around and hope that they won't hit you. You can kind of see them winding up before going against you, but for the most part, just try to kill them. Either way, now that we've dealt with that, we actually reached this top floor. The only issue is that we actually forgot to pick something up here. There is an ingredient needed for the vaccine, and I'm gonna have to run back later to pick it up. In the break room, we stock up on supplies before heading into the back square, but something is going on.
Something's wrong. Sir, let's regain our distance then.
Gotcha, bitch!
What the?
It looks like Umbrella are here to deal with Thanatos. This is the scenario's big baddie, an experimental tyrant created by Greg Muller, the researcher we saw in the beginning of this playthrough. We also saw Nikolai Zinoviev, a Russian Umbrella operative, which makes multiple appearances throughout the Resident Evil universe. Now that we're outside, we unlock a few doors. And it's good to unlock these because they can come in handy later. Now it's time for my biggest problem in this game, the sharks. Okay, so as we make it down to the dock, these sharks have caused me to replay this scenario multiple times, because if they catch your ass, it's an instant death. But this time, I actually baited my AI teammate and make sure that they get eaten instead of me. Lucky for us though, we meet up with our other squad member, and now we have what we need. Yoko is holding the P-base. This is one of the 3 ingredients needed for the vaccine, so we pick it up and use the elevator to get back to the laboratory. Insert the P-base into one of these devices, but we're still missing 2 ingredients. One of them we're going to be able to get from the tyrant Thanatos himself, that being the T-virus. But the other missing component we forgot to pick up at the elevator shaft. So we make our way down to the entrance hall, and this happens. So Thanatos is now hunting us, and this guy is big and fast. He's definitely one of the hottest boss battles, but we need to just ignore him and run. We gotta keep ignoring him, and eventually we should reach a set of electrical wires that are dangling. If we pull the switch right as he comes close to them, it will shock him. This will give us enough time and opportunity to pick up a sample of T-virus from his body. We quickly head back to where we didn't pick up the V-poison. This was over at the Hive nest, where we were taking the giant elevator. Now that we have that, we go back to the laboratory. We can finally put together the vaccine. While waiting for the antivirus to be made, the electricity goes out, so we head to the back rooms to figure out what's going on. But while here, we discover the researcher from the start.
Daylight is it. The only resource against the T-virus. I cannot give it over to Umbrella. They're the ones responsible for the catastrophe which has befallen the city. In retrospect, that entire T project was a total disaster. Brute force should not be the only criterion for a weapon. It must also be beautiful, unique, and godlike. You will also assist me. You're going to play with my ultimate creation.
It is Dr. Muller, and he's talking to Yoko, which is really weird. He talks as if he knows her, almost as if he was the one who, well, gave her amnesia.
Yoko, it's been 2 years. Oh, but you might not know that. After all, what happened was so terrible. I think you'd want to erase it from your memory.
We also spot Nikolai. He was sent here to deal with any potential antivirus, so he shoots the professor. Now that Muller is dead, things are getting hectic. There's a bomb that's been placed inside of the building, and it's up for us to fend for ourselves. We turn the lights back on and create some daylight vaccines. Now, these daylight vaccines are really important, because based on how many you make and how many you keep, it will determine what ending you get in decisions. So there are multiple endings here, I think up to 40 different endings, so your decision really matters. Either you can A, basically give yourself one of the vaccines and just run. Or B, you can take a vaccine, give it to yourself, and also keep one on you to make extra antiviruses for future outbreaks. Or C, you don't take the antivirus and you don't bring an extra sample. This is the worst case scenario. Now we have to rush through the whole university all the way back, and we run into Thanatos again. For the most part, we just have to avoid his ass and rush through to get out. As we find ourselves at the front entrance, we just have to wait for the place to blow up. And this is one of the downsides, I would say, of these games, is that you kind of just have to wait until the timer goes down, even if you're already done everything you needed. But it's time for the place to blow up.
What was that?
It seems a helicopter has spotted us and can save us from this situation. So we rush through one of the side doors. Now we made it to the unloading passage. It looks like we have to battle Thanatos again, and this was one of the most difficult battles in all of Outbreak, and it's really a cool final boss battle. We have to use everything to take down Thanatos. We shoot loads of bullets, grenades, whatever else we can find, but we also have to use elevation, and we can also avoid him, because what he does is jumping into the sky. What's really cool though is that you can see his shadow a few seconds before he drops down, giving you just enough time to try to avoid him. But we also have to climb up to these extra elevated spots to shoot off bullets without being taken down by him. Eventually, however, after a lot of work, Thanatos falls, and as such, we've defeated him and can escape with our lives intact. As the final cutscene plays, some somber music is going on, and we see our survivors running for their lives, trying to make it to the helicopter. We also see the credits, and this is honestly sort of bringing together the whole experience in a nice way. We see the names of the different directors that made each of the scenarios that we just experienced. Then, the end credits section stops, and we see the helicopter. But wait, it's Thanatos again, baby! So yeah, he wasn't actually killed, and I love this. The game fakes you out. Usually when you see the credit sequence, you would think to yourself, well, that's it, the scenario is over, you've completed the game. But nope, they'll pull a fast one, and they're gonna force you into battling him again. And I'll be real, I did not see this coming. I sort of forgot to kind of bring along the extra vaccine to take Thanatos down, a mistake which cost me this run, but I also want to point out the music in this section is just so epic, man. It just sounds so amazing. However, after a quick replay of this scenario, we get the vial, and this time we take Thanatos down. So, he's fallen, and we've escaped, and wow. That game was quite the journey. However, the ending here is a bit strange and doesn't really match with what happens in File 2 exactly, but it all depends on who you play as. The outro does always show Raccoon City pretty much being blown up. As I already mentioned before, this ending is really cool because there are a lot of different possibilities. It all depends on what character did you play as, What other characters did you have with you? And what did you do at the end with the antivirus? It all depends on the choices you made, and you're gonna get very many different sort of options for endings, up to 40 different endings, more or less. This personally to me is a great way to give players a reason to play all the scenarios multiple times to just see a lot of what happens in the different endings. It gives you a lot of perspective. However, we see a fighter jet in the final scene which hints to things to come, as the bombs start dropping and something called Sample T4 is picked up.
The rest will follow at 15-minute intervals.
And all we can see are the dusty remains of what once used to be Raccoon City. So, you might wonder to yourself, is that it? Raccoon City blew up and roll credits. Well, yes, that's it for Outbreak itself. We still have to explore File 2.
Outbreak. File 2.
We're welcomed into File 2 with this fantastic intro sequence that sets the tones for things to come and of course references back to the first mission from the main game. So there were loads of changes that were added into File 2 as opposed to the original Outbreak, and one of these things is, for example, that you can choose which one of the missions you want to take on in any order, and also you don't have to play with random characters. You can actually decide who your AI teammates will be. We're also given a new tutorial mission called Training Ground, which would allow us to learn the mechanics of Outbreak in case we haven't played in a while. Now this mission just takes you back to the original Outbreak mission in Jack's bar. So we'll skip that one for now and head on to the definitive first mission, and definitely one of the strangest missions in all of Outbreak. We're doing Wild Things. Now this mission is supposed to take place third in the timeline, so pretty much right after Hellfire, or more or less taking place with the other group that escaped from Jack's bar. Again, this is a general estimated guess, and I could be wrong, but we're going to talk about this again at the end of the video. Now this has to be one of the most brutal scenes I've ever seen. These animals are just getting chopped down, and it's kind of grim. Cindy has found her way to the Raccoon Zoo, and she's reading a note that mentions an evacuation chopper, but she has to go through the zoo to reach the other side. So our journey begins.
That looks like the city zoo's rear gate. If a rescue team's on the way, I'd better hurry. I have kind of a bad feeling about this, but it looks like I should check it out.
To enter the zoo, we head to a restaurant and pick up some codes for access. As we enter the combination lock, we're now able to access the zoo entrance. Inside, noises can be heard. the giant zombie elephant has smashed right through the wall, and now we have to hurry up. Our goal is to simply escape the zoo, but there is a way to also deal with the elephant. We can either kill it or simply just lock it away, but for our own survival, we're just going to avoid it for now. However, on the ground, Cindy, one of the other survivors, which we saw earlier, is actually laying dead and gone, so we skip interacting with her and move on to the offices. Here we deal with an infected hyena, but again, we just make sure to skip it so to not lose any health. Inside offices, there is a cool boss mechanic that takes place. There are holes in the walls, and the zombie elephant is able to actually poke through and grab or even hit you to deal damage. So it's best to avoid staying close to the gaping holes and instead just go inside of one of the rooms. Here we encounter a zookeeper that is hidden away. We now need to get our hands on a few different objects to unlock access to a special gate at the back of the zoo to the exit. To do this, we have to deal with a few things, like the elephant for example. Inside of the main office, there is a raccoon statue. It tells us we need 2 badges to unlock it, so it's time to run out and go to the elephant stage. Normally, this is where the elephant would be performing tricks for an audience. However, now it's all botched down and grim. So we start by heading upstairs to the control room. As the elephant is in the area, we gotta hurry up. Here we find a cassette. Using the cassette, we record an audio and music on it. We then use it to bait the elephant back to the stage. It does take a while to trick it into following us, but eventually it does show up. Now we just gotta close the gate, and it's stuck. Alright, the elephant is caught. However, we gotta go downstairs and grab a few things from a corpse that fell. Along the way though, we also encounter another annoying enemy type, that being the zombie hornbills. These guys are just painful to deal with, and they're equally as annoying as the infected crows. We're finally able to pick up the lion badge. This will be needed to unlock the front gate. We also find some rifle ammo that will be needed for later. We make it to the terrarium dome. This place is filled with a bunch of different animals, but we solve a quick animal puzzle and also find our first raccoon medal. There are loads of small little tasks that we have to do, but the worst one has got to be swimming through the alligator swamp. Once again, I let my AI teammates die for me though, so I can make it over. Now, if you thought that was enough animals, then I want to introduce you to the lions. These guys will attack us, so we have to fire off a few bullets to defeat it. We can then use the lion badge to open the front gate, but before we actually leave this place, there are some things we gotta get first. Pick up the alligator key on the ground and head back to the offices. We can now place the 2 raccoon medals that we got earlier and access more rifle rounds. However, you may notice we don't have a rifle, but a lot of ammo, so we're gonna have to head back to the alligator enclosure. The hyena wants to eat our booty, so we run as fast as we can to the observation tower. Inside, we spot a tram station in the distance. And we also pick up the rifle. Now, it's time to run. We rush over to the front gate that we opened earlier and make our escape. Alright, this is the boss battle and the end stage for this place. It's a zombie lion. Normally this lion is the same one that attacks the zombie elephant and kills it in a different cutscene, but this time we left the elephant in the enclosure and we won't see any of it anymore. Instead, we have to fight this thing off on our own. Now the thing is, we needed to get the rifle for this specific reason. We can now use it to defeat the lion. It charges at us several times, has a bit of a charge-up attack where it will just dash towards you. It does also have loads of items spread out around the area, so we can use those to our advantage. It does require some finesse to avoid this big fella, but eventually, once we've completed this mission, is when we've taken down the lion. I then quickly hurry and rush to the tram. As we're resting on the tram, we see a helicopter that crashes down into what seems to be a refugee camp, and everybody inside is left infected and dead. As the camera zooms out, all we see is death sprawling around the city. And that was Wild Things. It's a great way to get us into the flow of File 2. Something I forgot to mention at the beginning is that File 2 isn't just simply a follow-up. It's actually included loads of improvements and changes that's added to this specific game to make it load faster. Like, for example, the loading screens are quicker, you have the ability to shoot while moving, and the devs even increased the speed of the zombies, which will actually make them even stronger and faster. But that's not all. There's also a nightmare mode, which makes the game, well, into a literal nightmare. There are also tons of big and small additions, but we won't dive further into those for now. Instead, I want to point out that this specific mission basically also took place right after that one group from Jack's bar ran onto the street. They were able to escape and not go to the Apple Inn, but instead, they probably made their way over here towards the zoo and try to find a way to escape. However, what we need to do next is to continue on to the next mission. We're going to Underbelly. Underbelly is the second scenario in File 2, but it's also in the timeline placed right after Wild Things, so for the sake of continuity, this is the perfect way to continue our journey, as some of these guys from the tram probably had to run into the underground when the tram got stuck. After watching the survivors run into the subway station, we can feel their terror. One of these is Jim Chapman, who is a railway employee and also is the canon protagonist of the Underbelly scenario. As we start exploring the first sections of the subway station, we find ourselves a handgun and some ammo. Now that we have that, we also need a lighter. We can use this to check some inscriptions in one of the bathrooms. If we have these inscriptions, we also learn the code for something later down the line. Down at the subway tracks, we're able to find a burst gun, which can, well, burst fire. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. We also find the employee key, but then again, we get rushed by a bunch of zombies, and these guys are quick. Like I said, they're much faster here, and they add an extra level of fear and difficulty, even in easy mode. However, we can now use the key to access the employee hallway, and this place is interesting. There's tons of infected zombies, but also loads of rooms that have loads of items. Over at the control room, we can use the code, which is found in the bathrooms, to unlock one of the things here, which will give us access to a magnum. However, I won't be needing that for now. Instead, I head inside of the locker room. We type in the code from one of the notes, and it's just the word lock, literally. That's all it is. But inside, we find a important key. It's the B2F key. This key unlocks the stairwell door. If we go down into that passage, we run past a bunch of zombies and find the valve. But we also turn on the emergency power. We then head down one of the other paths. With the valve in our inventory, the water now looks pretty bad. The levels are pretty high, but also in the water there are infected zombies. And due to the emergency power being on, we also get zapped by electricity every so often. And this all does tons of damage. So this section was probably the one where we got injured the most. Eventually, we're able to make it into the pump room and use the valve that we had from earlier to remove the water that has submerged this area. But there's still one more thing needed in this section so we can complete it. We need some duct tape, something that we need to find. However, if you play this mission as David King, you should actually have duct tape already on you and can instantly patch things up. However, we need to find it ourselves. So for the time being, we head upstairs again and find the breaker room. We complete a short little puzzle, which just requires us to match numbers. But before we head back downstairs again, we check the storage room where we find duct tape. Now that we have that, we can patch up the giant hole in the pump. But in the hallway, you also found a mask. This is needed for us to escape this place. So, after patching up the hole, we've gone down to the platform again. And these are the gimmick enemies of this scenario, the mutated fleas. If they manage to actually hit you, they will suck your blood and grow much larger and stronger. So it's best to avoid them, okay? These are giga fleas. Do not deal with them. And once we've done this though, we quickly place the mask we picked up on the train from earlier. We hurry back upstairs. While we're waiting in the control room, a train can be heard in the distance. This is because we activated the power earlier, and this has caused a train to activate and start running. As we're on our way down, the train comes in to the station, but it crashes. Luckily for us though, Thanks to us fixing the patch earlier, the sprinklers now turn on and the water stops the fire from spreading. It also reveals the second mask, which we need to get our hands on. We grab it while avoiding the giant fleas, and then we attach it to the train. Now that the door has opened, we can head inside. The train is great. It serves as a good way for us to stock up on ammo, meaning that something big is about to happen. So we get medicine, ammunition, weapons, and then we head down one of the train tracks. Just as we're about to leave, Cindy was taken by one of the mutated fleas, so we head out to save her. But along the way, we encounter Megabyte. This is a gigantic flea which has grown abnormally larger and stronger than even the gigabytes that we've been dealing with so far. Now, this battle is actually a pretty cool one. The Megabyte will order around the gigabytes and make them roll in patterns. If they hit us, they do loads of damage. All we have to do is use guns and ammo we found inside of the train cart earlier to take it out. This thing is pretty much a bullet sponge, so you're going to be using a lot of ammunition, and thanks to your teammates, if you did keep them alive, you should be able to defeat it eventually. Now we gotta rush back to the train before it leaves, as the announcer is telling us to hurry up. Luckily though, we make it back to the train, and that means we made it out of Underbelly, with our heads held low, and things are only gonna get more tough.
Just ahead, a train was blocking our path and we had to pull back. But I'll tell you what, this crap is getting old real quick.
So for most of you, it might still feel like these scenarios aren't connected at all, and they sort of both are and aren't connected at the same time. I'll take a minute, like I said, at the end to tie it all together, but I would say that this scenario definitely takes place right after the previous one. They seem to be well adjusted and connected in such a way that once you escape the zoo, the tram crashes and you have to run into the underground. However, this next scenario takes us to one of the most interesting missions so far, Flashback. We find ourselves in a forest, and in this scenario, the canon person you should play as is Alyssa Ashcroft. Alyssa and some of the other survivors have hid inside of a cabin in the Arklay Mountains. All of a sudden, somebody walks in through the door.
I don't get many visitors around here. I hear the city's in quite a state right about now. Well, there is no...
The man is named Al Lester, and he starts to wonder what we're doing up in the mountains, even making a joke about there being no hospitals in these parts.
Let's hope no one gets hurt. It's not like there's a decent hospital around here after all.
This sentiment confuses Alyssa, and kind of makes us a bit sketched out by this man. The old man then decides to guide us somewhere, or at least we think he is. As we follow him, we get attacked by a new sort of zombie. These are called green zombies, and they have plants growing from their faces, which makes them able to spray poison gas. We reach a suspension bridge, which leads us to a big hospital, which is odd given what the old man said earlier, mentioning that there isn't one here. We decide to enter the building, and then this thing attacks us. This is the Axeman. This guy is going to be a massive pain to deal with, but we need to basically pass him here to make it into the reception office. Inside, we got ourselves loads of items to stock up on. One of these is the shotgun. The examination room also holds a few green zombies, as well as syringes containing a liquid that can destroy the plants in this location. We're gonna need multiple of these, so we pick them up. We have to quickly rush past the big Axeman, as we don't have enough resources to take him down just yet. We instead run into the auxiliary building. We use a syringe to defeat the overgrown zombie plants, and then make it into the pharmacy. Here we stack up on loads of healing items once again, but something is happening in the distance. It seems the bridge from earlier has fallen, meaning there is no way to escape from the location we came from earlier. On the way upstairs, the Axeman has found us, and oh shit, he thick boy! Luckily, we avoid him and make it to the opening on the roof. We climb up and find loads of plants shooting out poison, but we speed past them and make our way up the ladder. Somehow though, the Axeman has made it to the top as well, which is really weird, but nonetheless, he's here. He hunts us around the corners, but as long as we climb the vines to the top, he can't follow. At the top of the roof, we find my least favorite enemy of all time, and it is the wasps. But we can avoid the wasps and simply just go and use the syringe at the giant plant. Doing this will lead it to start falling apart. This is perfect because once we run downstairs and avoid the Axeman, a new hole has opened up due to the building collapsing on the top. Jump down and encounter a green zombie. We defeat it and pick up an axe. We head further down another hole, and this gets us to the storage room, which also houses the admin office key, which we'll be needing. However, just as we try to use the escape door, something happens. Whatever creature is infesting this place, it doesn't want to let us go, so we have to head to the admin office instead. But just like before, as soon as we make it to the second floor, the big guy is there waiting for us once again. Now at this point, we're running into some trouble. This guy is really difficult and all the zombies deal a lot of damage, so we skip them and run into the admin office as fast as we can. On the ground, we find a grenade launcher with flame rounds, a super important item which we definitely do need for later. We use the admin key to unlock the admin door, and inside we stock up on more items, and this is going to be taking us over to the big bookcase. When we interact with it, a secret passage opens up. We also find a note here, titled Doctor's Confession. This whole note is going over the experiments that Umbrella have been doing in this hospital, and how the doctor of this place, the head doctor, was the one that was doing these tests as well. The hallway twists and turns, and leads us right to the main roof. Here we find a small gap in the floor that leads us to room 202. After battling our way through hordes of zombies, we burn away a few more of the plant infestations. What's important now is to hurry downstairs, okay? We've got the weapons, we have the stuff we need, but we gotta plan our escape. To do this, we gotta get to the core of this building. Reach the intensive care unit. This is a place where, well, you would expect the most gravely injured people would be found. So it's sort of fitting that this is where we will battle the final boss. Inside, we find the huge plant. This is the heart, this is the core, and it's able to use its vines to grab us, the same vines that have destroyed this whole place. And this is, again, the core, the heart of what's been plaguing this decrepit place. Now, the reason we need to get our hands on the grenade launcher is specifically to take this thing down. Since we're using incendiary ammo, it will do far more damage to a plant-based enemy. So we repeatedly spam it while avoiding the vines as much as we can. Out of the core of the plant, a human corpse falls out, but we have no time to stand around and watch. The whole building's integrity is not stable, and it will collapse, so we gotta hurry and get out. Just as before we get to the exit door, we run into the Axeman for a final time. We can now either fight him and try to take him down, or we can simply run away. I make the decision to fight him using my remaining grenades, and after spamming a few of them to his body, he actually falls and he just runs away in fear. So you don't technically really kill him, but he does run away though. Either way, we managed to run out of the building just in time.
So there you are, my dear.
Now that we ran out, we see the old man Al from the start of the scenario. We learn that he was the Axeman all along, and the body that fell out of the boss battle seems to be his wife. This scenario was honestly fantastic. They introduced it perfectly and set up Al as a strange man. We followed him, but that was all just a trap, almost a way for him to bring more souls to feed his wife Dorothy, who had passed away at the clinic while being stricken with a deadly heart condition, which is also why she's found specifically in the intensive care unit. Either way, Dorothy had been infected by the TJCCC variant of the T-virus, which turned her into a sort of zombie plant. And well, her husband Al Lester was being struck by grief and thought that, well, this giant monster in front of him was a reincarnated version of his wife, and since he was also infected, his mind was pretty much gone. So he kept killing hikers and really anyone that ventured close to the hospital as a way to keep her alive. He himself, of course, was infected by the virus as well, and so he got to die while holding her in his arms. Damn. This scenario is honestly one of my favorites. I just love how the backstory is built up and slowly explored as we go through the building, learning little by little how it's all connected. Also, the Axeman is a fantastic villain and boss. He shows up randomly all the time and is genuinely a scary guy to deal with, since he hits hard and can block you from making further progress. But that was Flashback. This still leaves us with only 2 more scenarios to go. And this next one is my personal favorite. Welcome to Desperate Times. This was one of my personal favorite missions, and it isn't the most unique one per se, nor is it the most challenging mission, but what I love about it is the location. It takes place at the last bastion of hope, inside of the Raccoon City Police Department.
Take a look at this. It's a map of this place back when it was an art museum. There should be a ventilation tunnel underground.
And that'll get us out of here?
It should, but it's so narrow you might be the only one who can fit through.
Yes, that is my boy Marvin. You will all know him from the Resident Evil 2 game, but this is a famous character within the universe, and this is what I love about this scenario. It works like a mini prequel as to what was happening at the station prior to Leon arriving in the main games. It seems the officers need our help, as we need to find a way to escape from the station, as we're all being surrounded by zombies around the building. We start the scenario by checking the reception desk for a code and some handgun ammo. We then head back to the main hall, where we can find Marvin and Officer Rita Phillips. This scenario has a very specific mechanic. We have to pick up neutralizing gas canisters. These are needed to stop the toxic fumes from killing us as we make our way through the station in search of plates, which are needed to open the secret passage. We open one of the doors to let our teammate in, and whoever is on the other side will also give us the first plate needed. As we place it down, we then head out for the hunt of the others. When we reach the witness interrogation room, we find a shotgun. We quickly equip it. As we make our way back to the offices, we use the code we found previously to unlock a safe inside of the chief's place. Now that we have that, we have the second piece, and we can open up one of the doors to let in our teammate, Cindy. As we find ourselves in the stairwell where one of the police officers from the intro cutscene is dealing with some other zombies, we're kind of forced to avoid what's going on and just deal with an annoying crow. Finding a room, we push a box over, which will let us climb the box on the opposite side. We then head back to the main hall. We ask Cindy for one of the puzzle pieces that she's holding, and then we climb the ladder and go to that box that we pushed earlier. Here we can find the ruby plate. Now it might feel like we're almost done, but no, we still need one more plate. To find this one, we had to go somewhere else. As we go through the different hallways, we reach the night duty room, where we replenish our resources before it's time to head down to the bottom part of the police department. We explore the morgue and multiple other rooms until we reach and run across a document, which we will be needing. Now, this secret file is going to be given to a reporter who's on the hunt for some information, but he's locked away in the holding cells. So we go into the underground parking lots, and here we move some boxes on the left side of the room. We do this as a getaway plan, which we'll be needing later on. We head deeper down into the underground, and here we find the holding cells. We meet up with the reporter that's been locked away. We offer him the secret paper in exchange for these sapphire plates, and now that we've done that, we can head back upstairs. We can now use the little getaway path we cleared earlier, which takes us outside of the building. Here we can of course see the zombies, which are just waiting to enter.
It'll take at least an hour to get through a space this narrow. Use this to keep in touch with me. It doesn't have much range, but the signal should get through if I'm close by.
Leave it to me. I promise I'll be back with help.
Rita has entered the pathway, and now it's just for us to remain and survive as long as we can. she's going to look for help, and she will find it with Harry, who is driving around a van. Now, Harry, for those who do not know, was the officer we also saw in the first mission back in Outbreak. He was the one who was helping out below those hordes of zombies. Marvin is waiting outside, so we join him, and now it's battling against time. We have to prepare ourselves. See, the zombies are going to breach the perimeter of the police station, but we can slow them down if we get some reinforcements in place. We quickly hurry to the rooftop, where we're going to pick up as many plywood planks as we can, but then we're going to be using them to board up the doors all around the police station. This is something similar to what you would do in, like, really any zombie game, like Call of Duty Zombies, for example. After sealing things up, we head downstairs again on the hunt for something different. First, we deactivate the shutters in the garage. Now that the shutters are gone, we can access this ramp and pick up a submachine gun. Over in another one of the hallways, we smash the door repeatedly until it breaks open. Here we also find the ace key, which we can use back upstairs to unlock one of the cases, but for now, we don't really need that, because things are getting really bad, so we gotta hurry.
Help's on the way. Get to the front lobby.
So we rush back to the front door for our final stand. All the zombies are in, and things are getting bad. So currently we are surrounded, and this is why we needed a submachine gun and as much ammo as possible, because these zombies just keep on coming. This is the reason we needed to use the wooden planks, which is specifically to delay and give us enough time to stock up on ammo. However, with some wits and by avoiding the zombies by running around, we are eventually able to survive the onslaught. Looks like Rita and Harry have made it. They showed up just in time with a van. We all rush on board.
Is this everyone? What about Marvin?
Move! Go, go, go!
Marvin!
Don't worry about me. Just get going.
No way! I'm not leaving you behind!
But it looks like Marvin is going to stay behind, and basically does that to save our asses. As we drive away, Rita is crying over the loss of Marvin. But that's not all.
He was born to be a cop. It'll take a lot more than that to stop a tough guy like him. Hell, we haven't even finished training the new recruits yet. Right, Marvin?
We also spot a police car going back into the center of Raccoon City on its way to the police station. And, well, it's speculated and theorized that the person in that car is actually Leon from Resident Evil 2, which is a cool thought, because if you think about it, we just watched Marvin walk off through a door, which means he isn't fully dead yet, and he went in a direction which we didn't actually access in this playthrough, so I can only imagine that he probably went to the same area where he eventually meets up with Leon. Overall, this mission was one of my personal favorites. I think that it just shined. It perfectly shined in every sort of way. We were just there, right before Leon shows up, giving some weird context for what's been taking place here, and also shows us how perhaps Marvin ended up in such a dire situation, but I also think this scenario suffers from not having that much to do. Now, the mechanic of the gas can get annoying at times, but it also does force you to juggle your inventory and make sure that you have enough gas canisters to save your health. Overall, I think it's just a great way to lead us into the final mission of File 2. The only mission that remains now is End of the Road. Now, this mission is only really unlocked once you've completed all the previous ones, but before we do this scenario, I should point out that this is arguably the most disputed mission, and most people either hate it or love it. And I think it all comes down to a single thing: the length. Whereas most of the other missions can be done in about 30 to 40 minutes on repeat runs, with the End of the Road, you're more or less locked into an hour-plus journey. You will not be able to finish this in under an hour. It just takes long. But in some way, I like that, as it gives this scenario time to sort of work like a thread back through all the previous scenarios by including lots of different locations for us to explore. So without further ado, let's begin the end of the road.
No! It's way too dangerous to go back now.
I left something very important back there. Trust me when I say it's gonna be a big help to us later. I promise I'll be back before you know it.
Fine, but I'm not waiting long.
Fair enough. Thank you.
It seems trouble is brewing. We follow Dr. Linda Baldwin as her and Captain Rodriguez need to make an escape, but she wants to get something from the Umbrella Research and Development Center, so she runs back, leaving him alone.
You all right, buddy?
Yeah, thank you.
However, back at the Umbrella Center, David King, who serves as the canon character for this particular scenario, is saving Dr. Carter from another Umbrella researcher zombie. Alright, now it's time for us to roll. The facility has gone into lockdown, so we have to run around and get our hands on codes and keys just like every other scenario. However, here the whole place is infested with Hunter R's. Now these guys are fast and they hit super hard, so we need to pick up some chemical solutions in the examination room. These guys of course are similar to the ones that we've seen before. You guys may remember them from one of the previous scenarios down and below freezing point. Now, either way, we make our way towards Carter as Linda is left to fend for herself. On the way, we've picked up chemical solutions that we throw at the Hunter R's, which kills them instantly. First, we pick up a level 1 access ID, and we also turn off some shutters so we can reach Carter. Once we get to his location, we pick up an ammo disc. Now the thing is, this thing needs data, but there is no data inside of it, so we have to go down into the mainframe. So we fight our way there, and once we reach it, we upload the data onto it. We then go back and hand it right over to Carter.
Okay. I've reprogrammed it to take out those amphibian monstrosities instead.
Oh boy, so it turns out that what Carter was up to was actually bringing to life Tyrant R, and he was brought to life by Carter himself to stop the Hunters. And this thing, well, it's going to be going through these waves of enemies like they're nothing, basically like a literal butcher. As we follow the giant tyrant, we make it to the escape hatch. However,
Linda, looks like he already finished cleaning up here as well. Extraordinary. I told you, there is nothing to...
No! Carter!
so yeah, that went just about as well as you could have anticipated. The whole plan of Carter's was to blow this thing up, but the Tyrant R kind of has its own will and went against him. So it killed Carter and it threw Linda down a hatch. So we gotta run away from it. Now this thing is huge and it will follow you the whole time. He will keep catching up to you, and every time he's close by, music will play. Similar to like Mr. X or whatever, but that doesn't really matter. We are able to escape into the sewers, but the whole time, we're also being hunted by him still. We see Linda laying unconscious in the bottom of the sewers, so we gotta head down to help her out. As we're just barely able to flee away from him, we make it down into some weird underground. Here he won't follow us, but instead, we're gonna have to fight off hordes of zombies and spiders. Finally, when we find Linda again, it seems some of the pipes here are about to burst, and water gushes in.
I must have passed out or something. Wait, Carter. He didn't make it. That means a damn thing unless I can get my pretty little head out of here. Huh?
We've now been swept away, and we're no longer at the Umbrella center. We find ourselves crawling out of a manhole. Dr. Baldwin has been shot, and the guy who did it is the UBCS's team leader, Arnold, who's been told to kill the helicopter captain from earlier, Rodriguez, and anyone that he's been taking with him. Basically, Umbrella doesn't want to leave any loose threads.
That seals off any ground exit.
What? Did you forget I'm the one that gives the orders here? Wait! Think of the position I'm in.
Now that Dr. Baldwin is injured, we grab her and drag her inside of the Apple Inn. Again, the Apple Inn makes a reappearance multiple times here and kind of gives context. At this point, this is the Apple Inn after everyone else has left, right? The city has kind of been in shambles. The burning fire that was happening here during Hellfire has been put out, but all the people that used to be here are pretty much gone. Same as the boss battle that takes place in here, like the massive liquor. But nonetheless though, what do? Well, we stock up on loads of ammo, and now we gotta go outside. Now the best way to deal with Arnold here is just to bait our teammates to get hit with his sniper fire. He'll keep firing with intervals, about 3 intervals before he shoots you. He's atop the highway, so again, just bait your teammates and make it all the way to the alley. Now most of the rest of this is currently just an escort mission. We try to keep Linda alive and draw her along as long as we can, while we're trying to avoid and survive the traps and landmines that have been put up by Umbrella all over Raccoon City. One of these things, for example, is found right next to this bunch of cars. But we have to rush now, because Rodriguez is about to leave with the helicopter, and Umbrella is about to catch up to us.
They plan to contain the incident the old-fashioned way, blowing up the target location and everyone in it with missiles? Why didn't you say anything, you weasel?
I kept telling you to hurry.
Damn.
Oh. Well, where are you going? You need to find that capsule.
You do it. I'm not gonna go up in flames with the rest of the town. This job is turning out to be a lot hotter than I had expected.
Hey!
As he's flying away with the chopper, one of the guys from earlier, one of the Umbrella members, actually shoots down the chopper. Well, not really. It shoots down the cargo on the chopper, and inside is some kind of tyrant which we have never seen before.
Is that the package? What the?
The Umbrella soldiers approach it, but they're not able to do anything. This thing is dangerous, and it kills them right away. Back inside of the building where we were hiding, zombies are overtaking it. They're rushing us from left, right, center. One of the zombies that comes through the door is actually similar to the original zombie, the first zombie you actually encounter back in the original Outbreak mission. Either way, we make it to the roof. As we jump over, we get into the battle with the final boss. This is Nyx. Nyx is a big boy and hits really hard, but there are loads of weapons strewn around on the ground. What we have to do now is pick up one of the grenade launchers. If we shoot it at the core of this thing, it does the most damage, eventually going down on one knee. When it goes down on one knee, we gotta close up to it. We gotta get as close as we can and fire off multiple times. However, we ran out of bullets, so we have to pick up shotguns and really anything we can find all around this place. It does take a while, and with enough persistence, we're able to fire off a final bullet and defeat this thing. But we still have to hurry up. We have to grab Linda and rush to the armored truck and escape from here. And so, we slowly drive out of Raccoon City by the inch of our lives, but we're still here. We escape, and we watch the army blow all of Raccoon City to pieces, with nothing remaining.
Arrow 2, direct hit on the target, sir. Angel 1, both missiles are confirmed hits. Return to base immediately.
This is Angel 1, roger that.
Arrow 7 and 10, direct hits. Both Angel 2 and 3 have emptied their payloads.
Arrow 5 correction, in hit coordinates.
As we watch the burning remains of Raccoon City in the distance, our characters start reflecting on how they just survived all of this.
I saw the town go up in flames. Then again, it's not like I forgot what happened. It's just that I'm the type of guy who focuses on the now, not ancient history.
What's done is done. We can't take it back. However, we may be able to start again from the beginning. That's the one gift we humans have. We can rebuild.
After the credits start rolling, we get a post-credit scene of Kevin, showing us where he went after the whole incident, giving us a kind of nice ending to his story. And that concludes the gameplay of File 2, and wow, this game was fantastic. It's a combination of the original game as well as just a bunch of extra stuff, and I loved it. But before we end this, we need to explore a few things and explain as well as define some stuff before we put the final pages of this book together. First, let's start with the story. As you may have noticed, this game doesn't have a concrete, consistent story throughout, but it's rather a bunch of what-if scenarios and situations that could have happened. And that is something which a lot of fans of the original main games may not have liked, as perhaps they preferred a single storyline that can be followed throughout. But I actually think it benefits this game. You gotta keep in mind, this is a multiplayer game, so having a consistent story may be a bit complicated if one person's doing one thing and another person doing something else. I think what they did here was to basically show off a different variety of different characters as well as different stories. Each character has different endings in both Outbreak and File 2, making for, again, a lot of replayability. For example, in the original Outbreak, Decisions, you have essentially 3 different endings for every single character. One of these is the zombie ending, which only happens if you didn't cure yourself with the Daylight antivirus. Then there is the regretful ending, which specifically happens if you took the Daylight antivirus yourself, but you didn't bring an extra vial to prevent further outbreaks. Then there's also the hopeful ending, where you did all of the above. You both cured yourself and brought extra antivirus with you. But there are even special endings that can happen online, depending on which pair of characters you're playing as. These are the special endings. These can be either with Kevin, Jim, David and Mark, Cindy and George, or Yoko and Alyssa, as all of these characters basically stay behind and die during the bombings of Raccoon City, making for a somber ending. And in File 2, we have a totally different ending that doesn't exactly match 100% with the one in the original Outbreak. But in this one, we basically see everybody escaping with Linda, and everyone gets a post-credit scene from the highway where we learn what happened to these characters. For example, Kevin in this case works now in Miami. On the other hand, Jim is out buying new Yeezys, and Yoko is testifying against Umbrella in a court trial. So in total, for the main game ending, you have almost 40 different possible situations. And this, in my opinion, gives you a reason to try to play scenarios over and over until you've done every single one of these, because it lets you experience the game in many different ways. But that's the ending. What about piecing together the story of this game as good as we can? Well, let's do that. To do this, we're going to be going with the game each day by day and each story by story. So some of the characters might have been in different locations at different times, but we're going to try our best to explain things. First, we have to establish Outbreak takes place on 24th of September in 1998, which is the day when everything begins. We can also assume that all the characters we followed throughout Outbreak were all at Jack's bar on that day. September 24th, 1998. As everyone in the bar escapes, on the 24th, the group splits up. One must have ran out the front door and down to the Apple Inn that wasn't on fire just yet. These were Alyssa, Yoko, and David in the cannon. And the other group went onto the roof, just like in the scenario itself. However, the group that went to the roof find themselves blowing up a horde of zombies with the police, while the group that ran to the Apple Inn are stuck inside trying to kill the Liquor Queen, meaning that Outbreak and Hellfire pretty much take place on the same day and the same time, with the survivors just being split up at this point. But on this same exact day, wild things also takes place, as Cindy and her group have escaped, possibly crashing with the police van from the first scenario's ending, after dealing with the horde of zombies. And now this group has to fight their way here through the zoo alongside Cindy, who is also the canon character for Wild Things. They have to hurry as the word of evacuation team is told to them. Meanwhile, the other group from the Apple Inn have been taken to the hospital, which makes sense since they ran into a bunch of police officers, hospital workers, as well as firemen right after dealing with Hellfire. And once we reach the hospital, there are still doctors there, Like, keep in mind, there are still people alive in the hospital, not just zombies. The group in the hospital eventually escape using the sewers, and the group in the zoo take a tram. This means that the canon survivor in the Hive is also Yoko, which perfectly leads into Below Freezing Point, which was reached using the waterway found in the underground in the Hive mission. And in Below Freezing Point, Yoko is the main character again, and she has run into the researcher, which she knows, but she doesn't remember her since her memory was wiped. But she and the others fight their way through Birkin's lab. The previous group, however, with Cindy, have gotten off the tram and ran into the metro station, where Jim serves as the canon character because, well, he works in the underground in the subways. Together, they fight through the Mega Bike boss and escape using the train there. Here, once again, the groups split. One heads into the forest and the mountains with Alyssa, the canon character of the Flashback scenario. Meanwhile, Kevin has made it to the Raccoon City Police Department, probably after getting off the train from the subway in Underbelly, where he helps Marvin and the others out at the station. Alyssa and the rest, though, are stuck in the forest and are just trying to hold out and survive until Al, the creepy old man, shows up and throws a wrench into their plans. Meanwhile, the others are trying to survive the police station. Leaving only the endings now, but the fact that there are two different endings is what makes stuff a little bit confusing, but we can kind of explain it. So, the survivors from Jack's bar, who went to the roof and managed to escape with Rita during desperate times and reach the Umbrella facility. As to what happened with Rita, we don't actually know. Meanwhile, the people from the Apple Inn that were hiding in the forest have reached the Raccoon City University on the hunt for a cure that they can use before they escape to hell. This also makes sense because Yoko and Alyssa are part of the most of the scenarios that happen when we go this path. Meanwhile, the others like Cindy and Kevin make more sense with Jay's bar and the Umbrella facility scenario instead. With this being the final conclusion. We have Yoko and her crew and Cindy and her crew. With Yoko's squad, they went to the Apple Inn. They are taken to the hospital with injuries, but the outbreak reaches them there as well, and basically the Hive takes place. They escape into the sewers and find themselves in Birkin's lab. They then take a train out of Birkin's lab into the mountains near a mansion and a creepy hospital, while they hide out in a cabin. The hospital is ruined, so they head back into town because the forest is not safe either, and they find themselves at Raccoon City University, where George now knows some of the teachers there. They fight through the university and develop the daylight cure before they escape using the helicopters. Cindy and her group, well, they escape from Jack's bar to the roof and then into the city. They use the zoo as a way to get to the tram. Once the tram crashes, they have to find some way to get away, so they go through the streets and reach the subway. The train here they board, it stops right outside the police station, so they get outside and go right to it. However, the van that escapes from desperate times fails and they have to run and hide in the Umbrella facility, the research and development department. And this place, well, this is where things just go totally wrong. And they're back in the city again with Linda alongside them, fighting to leave the city before the army makes everything go to shit. Now this is the best case for explaining the story. This game is a very hard one to piece together, and it's hard to make everything fully match, but I don't really know any other way to present it to you guys than this, so let me know if I got anything wrong. That was the story. What about the gameplay in Outbreak? Well, this is the thing that I love about this game in particular. It's the amount of variety and small things you can discover. I replayed a lot of these scenarios several times, and each time I felt slightly different because different items would spawn in different locations, different characters would act differently and make different things happen. Whereas most multiplayer games, and especially zombie games, tend to be all about mowing down as many enemies as you can while solving very menial tasks, I feel like Outbreak did something else. It got that pure essence of what an old Resident Evil game is and brought it in here. The puzzles are the core, and you get to do it with the boys while cracking open a few cold ones. And having your hands on different scenarios, things can go pretty crazy pretty quickly. And I kind of love that. I think the only issue with Outbreak back in the day was the lack of voice chat and hard time communicating with teammates. However, I think if they properly remade this game for today's audience and included the long-lost File 3, it could make for a fantastic game. But I find it unlikely that we'll get anything like this due to the failure of games like Resident Evil Resistance. But we can always dream. I did mention it a second ago, but one thing we haven't spoken much about is File 3. This was meant to be the third and final conclusion to the game Outbreak, but due to poor sales, well, they never actually released the final version. However, some remnants of File 3 have been found using cheat devices like the GameShock over in File 2, and it was possible to unlock characters like Hunk and loads more that I don't really have time to dive deeper into today, but nonetheless, I want to say that it is a shame File 3 never got released, and it could have been a great conclusion to the Outbreak series. I think, as a final point, I want to say that what made Outbreak so fun to me was the combination of kind of an ambiguous story, but also the replayability. I replayed these scenarios several times, and I felt like there was always something different each time, and it was more fun trying to do it faster and faster each time. Now, I'm a person that loves small details that are hidden in games, and stories that aren't super in your face and leave things up to interpretation. And Outbreak does both those things phenomenally. I kind of wanted to make this video because someone put Outbreak on a list of the worst Resident Evil games, and it kind of shocked me. So I had to play Outbreak myself to prove to myself that it couldn't be true. And I'm happy to say that I was right. The game is fantastic. I don't think it's as awful as some people say. Now, the story may not be the easiest to understand, and the AI can be a pain in the ass, but at the core of this game is the experience of regular people trying to survive with their lives on the line, while also exploring and understanding what has taken place in their home city. I think it's a game that everyone should experience and was made by a dedicated team of developers that were just thrown a bone and told to make a multiplayer Resident Evil game. If you enjoyed, drop a like and subscribe, as this video took forever to make and we're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.